As far as evolution is concerned, much of the information presented to us appears to have many missing links, and after careful analysis we can see that it supports a racist agenda that promotes white supremacy and suppresses much of the ancient history, particularly that of Africa. The issue of eugenics is not a new one. Darwin propagated it, and the elitists adopted it as the new religion of modern times. The notion that any race is superior to another is totally preposterous, yet there are many vectors who actually believe and spread this disinformation on behalf of the elitists. These vectors operate in various parts of society, and are on the surface sometimes totally independent from one another. Yet the message they convey boils down to the same prejudice of racism. So one has to wonder from where all this obsession with race and bloodlines actually stems from.
In the book of Job it says, dead things are formed from under the water, and the inhabitants thereof. And then when you look to the comment about this, it says, the place where the Rephaim stay, which is beneath the waters. Dead things in Hebrew is Rephaim, the offspring of the fallen angels, akin to the Nephilim. But again, just for now, let's notice that they're talking about living under the waters. You know, the Celtic legends speak of exactly the same thing. How that when the gods, the negative beings, come to attack the gods, they come from under the ocean. That's another thing that people just throw across the room and go, what is this nonsense? Now, these beings came to our planet, and after they knew that their pursuers had basically gone, they emerged out onto the surface of the earth and set up their headquarters on the continent of Appalachia, and the headquarters was called Atlantis. Atlantis is not a continent. This is another piece of disinformation that's been brought out. There was 5 gigantic continents in those days: Tyrrhenia, Beringia, Oceania, Fennoscandia, and Appalachia. And Appalachia was in the north. It's where, North America, Alaska is, or where the Arctic is now, right across past Greenland, Iceland, into where north of England, and then into Sweden, and into Siberia. That whole area, but specifically the part between, say, Greenland and England, this is where Atlantis was, on a gigantic continent. You could walk the whole way. And the headquarters of these alien beings is what we've come to call Atlantis. And when they set up this advanced, they had all their technology with them, spacecrafts and all sorts of super technologies. Remember Superman, the movie? How, when they watch Superman, when he goes up to his, his oracle or his tabernacle, his temple, don't they show him going north, up into the Arctic, into the snows, and then he goes into his precinct, and it's all like a crystalline computer? Do you remember that? Superman from another planet? Yeah, somebody's trying to tell us that these beings who came here were what you would call in Milton the fallen angels, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. And they had an agenda that did want to interfere with the Homo sapien at that time. So they started to corral, and they started to research all of the life forms and all of the peoples of the earth at that time. And they started to corral, just like in the movie Planet of the Apes, they show this. They started to corral the people onto this place of Atlantis and started to check into their entire biology. And then at a certain point, thousands of years later, not immediately, because it takes time to set up all of these things, genetic changes were done. And the result being that almost all the original Homo sapiens were either changed, and those who weren't changed were killed or created into slaves and subsequently faded out. And the being that they created, we might want to term Homo Atlantis. A being that has pure alien DNA and has pure human DNA. But the euphemism, or the poetic euphemism for these people, is called the Sons of the Serpent. Because, like I said, the original people were called the Brotherhood of the Snake, or the Serpent people. Not because they look like serpents, and we'll come to why they really were called the serpents in a minute. But their first progeny was called the Sons of the Serpent. And that's why we have in the Bible the term, it says, and God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness. Right? They're telling you all about this in the book of Genesis. And by the way, does anybody know that the word Genesis even means the genes of the goddess Isis? Or the generation of Isis? Implying something? But anyway, when they created this firstborn, they sent the firstborn out to be their servants, to actually go out into the Garden of Eden, into Atlantis, Appalachia, and their territories that they were conquering, and do their physical work for them. But after a certain period of time, these sons of the serpent had the human DNA. And therefore they had the humanity, the humanism, and the sense of spiritual connectedness to things, that sensibility that their own fathers didn't have. And it dawned on these sons of the serpent that finally they realized, to cut a long story short, that they didn't want to serve these masters anymore, because they probably didn't agree with them and didn't like doing this and didn't feel that they should be subservient. And it's interesting, too, because they had the high intelligence and the divine spiritual connection. So they left. They actually upped and left as a race. Probably not all of them, but whatever the group of these sons of the serpent, they actually exited out of Appalachia, out of Atlantis, and resituated their own civilization on the continent of Oceania, which we now call Lemuria, which is estimated to be where the Pacific is, you see. And they completely left, just exited out, leaving their alien fathers with a predicament of what to do. So what they did is they went back to the drawing board again to create another entity. It says, let us make him who shall nourish and sustain us. What shall we do to be invoked, to be remembered in earth? We have tried with our first creatures. Look at this. But we could not make them venerate us. So then let us try to make obedient, respectful beings who shall nourish and sustain us. This is from a Mexican book, the Popol Vuh. Do you know the conquistadors, how many books they burned? You want to know why? If this is one little piece of one little book, right? Think what those books really contained, and now find out why they were burned.
The concept of organized religion is not new. It predates Christianity by a few thousand years. The pharaoh Akhenaten was officially the first to introduce a monotheistic religion in Egypt. There are indications that similar occurrences happened before that in other parts of Africa. It is also a fact that modern religion stems from solar worship. The entire Vatican and all of Christianity are based on it. There have been 4 major cults of worship since Atlantean times, which would be the stellar cult, which worshipped the stars, the lunar cult, which worshipped the moon, Saturnalian or Saturn cult, and the solar or sun cult. Stellar and lunar have been abolished and superseded by the sun, and in the public side Christianity and other mainstream religions. But many elements have been taken from the previous cults and implemented into modern theology. In short, mainstream religion is nothing but a concoction of various previous religions or cults, manipulated and altered to create a system of control that makes people not only obedient servants, but that also makes them taxable after death. The modern elite, which have been the same bloodlines for millennia, are aware of all this secret knowledge, and are all too happy to conceal it from us. They let us know in subtle ways, but merely to taunt us about our willful ignorance in all matters important. One of the methods they use to brag about their beliefs and allegiances is symbolism. The elite is comprised of a conglomerate of secret societies, Freemasonry being the predominant one, although on the whole not evil in origins, but infiltrated by the evil and controlling elements of what is now known as the Illuminati. A compilation of secret brotherhoods, although not all amicable amongst themselves, but unanimous in their collective goal of having full control over the population, both spiritual and physical, or body and mind.